These tragedy of the commons problems are among the harder ones for this unit of the material. They always start by asking what's the unregulated outcome, and the key here is that people will keep buying alpacas and sending them to the commons as long as they do better or as well as they would do in the alternative investment. So here the alternative investment is a government bond that pays 10%, so that they have 1,000 saved. So as long as they can make $100 per year, they're going to be okay with buying an alpaca and grazing it. So we look down this column. We see that if there were just 4 people with alpacas on the commons, they'd be making a net income of $150. Somebody holding a bond would say, "Hey, I could send an alpaca out there and get $150." They don't quite understand the problem of their alpaca ruining the grazing. Anyway, we end up with this outcome of 5 alpacas grazed, and that's where the last alpaca results in everybody making just as much grazing alpacas as they would holding bonds. So 5 alpacas, and then everybody's making 100 on their $1,000 investment. So net income, they get 1,100 for selling that alpaca, but they spent 100 to get it. So net income was 100. Same for the bond. So 8 people are making 100 each. Village income is 8 times 100. We don't have to separate out the bonds income and the alpaca income because everybody's earning the same 100, and so village income is 800. The harder part of these problems is to ask, well, what's going to be village net income? And from your class materials that B and C go on to ask about village best income, and I'm just going to stay on this screen to show you how we do this. And the logical principle that's going to guide us is that from the point of view of the village, we only want to send another alpaca out there so long as the gains to the village from sending one more alpaca are greater than or equal to the gains to the village from using that $1,000 for a government bond. So we're going to have to figure out the marginal income or marginal village income, village revenue if you want to call it that, per alpaca. So we're going to first have to calculate the village total revenue from alpacas, and we just multiply how many alpacas are out there times the price per alpaca to get that total revenue. So obviously it's 1,300 if we just send one. 2 times 1250 is 2,500. 3 times 1,200, 3,600. 4 times, what's that going to be? That's going to be 4,600. And notice, that's supposed to be a 6. Heck, I can't write and talk at the same time. 0, 0. Notice what's happening. I've done a lot of these problems, as you might imagine. Notice that last alpaca graze just caused village revenue to go up by just 1,000. So that's, remember that it needs to go up by at least 1,100 to be in the village best interest to send that alpaca. So I can just stop there because I know it's only going to get worse because the grazing keeps getting worse. We can see that from the falling price. All right, so the marginal revenue from this perspective of the village, if we were grazing 0, it would go to 1,300. We may as well do that. Sometimes 1 is the right number. But if we send a second one out, notice that village income goes up by 1,200. So, that makes sense to send that second one out. Third one, village income goes from 2,500 to 3,600. That's an 1,100 gain. And then from the perspective of the village, that's, it's a tie whether we send that third alpaca out or not. It's, you could flip a coin. That third alpaca does just as well as holding a government bond. And I think if I recall correctly, if you multiply out the numbers, either 2 alpacas on the commons or 3 gets you to the highest level of village income. So socially best is it is just 3 alpacas, and then village income and I'm just going to say for 3 alpacas, let's do this. Alpaca income, net income is $600 on 3,000. That leaves 5 villagers or 5 villagers savings for government bonds. That's going to be another 500 from bonds, and we add them up and we get $1,100. And I'll create a new screen to talk about the last part of this question. But the key to remember from this screen before we do that, or as we go do that, is to remember that if someone owns the grazing rights, they're going to be able to take $3,000 and turn it into a flow of income of $600 per period, where if they bought government bonds, their flow off that $3,000 would just be $300 of net income. That's going to be the key. So when we solve for the optimal grazing, the optimal number of alpacas to be grazed, we realize that whoever holds those rights gets $300 extra income. The last part of this question asks us, well, what are those grazing rights going to sell for? And the key is we have to ask the question, how much money would be necessary at 10% interest rate to produce a flow of $300 per year? So the way we write that out logically is 0.1, that's 10%, times X, whatever number we're looking for, equals that $300 per year flow. Since it's 10%, it's pretty easy to see, but I'm going to lead you through the algebra because we sometimes have 7% or whatever. It's not always an easy number to do. So the answer is X is going to be equal to 300 divided by our interest rate, in this case 0.1, and obviously that's 3,000 in this case. So this, when we get 10%, the math is the easiest it can be. So, but there it is. The key is to know how to do the math, because I almost guarantee you on an exam you won't have a simple 10% interest rate.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.